Hola, bonjour, uh, privyet, uh, guten Tag. This is page 15 of the Bible, chapter 13. That's where we left off yesterday. So I have some tea. I have Jewel. So try to get through as much of the Bible as I can. This is chapter 13. Abram and Lot separate. The separation of Lot. It's right here, chapter 13. So Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the Negeb. Now Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver and in gold. This dude's balling. And he journeyed on from Negeb as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. And Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. You gotta have tents in Bethel, dude, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together. For their possessions were so great, they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and the herdsmen of Lot's cattle. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites, I'm going with parasites, dwelt in the land. Okay? So there's strife because there's Abram versus Lot. Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me." He's a pragmatic guy. "In between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we're kinsmen. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go right. Or if you take the right hand, then I will go left." He gives them either side. He gives them a choice of sides, like Ruby Tuesdays. And Lot lifted his eyes, and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Spoilers, we haven't even talked about Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus, they separated from each other. Okay, so Lot had his pick, right or left, he went right. Thus, they separated from each other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, where Lot dwelt among the cities of the valley, and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. The Lord said to Abram after Lot had separated from him, "Lift up your eyes and look up. Look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land which you see, I will give you and to your descendants forever. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California, New York Islands. I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your descendants also can be counted." So, in other words, I guess you can't count the amount of descendants because how would you count the amount of dust? "Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you." This is pretty generous. So Abram moved his tent and came and dwelt by the oaks of Mamre, at which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. All right, sweet chapter. Next one, Lot's captivity and rescue. In the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, Mer king of Elam, and Tidal king of Goim. These kings made war with Bera king of Sodom, Bersha king of Gomorrah, Shinab king of Admah, Shamber king of Zebediim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. And all these forces in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea, the Dead Sea, I believe. 12 years they had served Shed or Laomer, but in the 13th year, chapter 14, 13th year, they rebelled. Eve, in the 14th year, Shed or Laomer and the kings who were with them came and subdued Rephaim and Ashtaroth, Karnaim, and Zuim in the Ham, and Emim in the wilderness. Then they turned their back and came to En-Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and subdued all of the country and all of the Amalekites and the Amorites who dwelt within Hazon Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zebediim, the king of Bela, that is Zoar, went out and they joined battle in the king of Shinar. Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now, the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits. And as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them. The rest of them fled to the mountain. So the enemy took all the gods of Sodom and Gomorrah and their provisions and went their way. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. One summer day, she borrowed everything I owned and simply ran away. What's it called? Yeah, so this Bidam stuff, Bidam, it's like, I don't know, lava? It's what they made the sword swinging thing to protect the tree of life. So this is a toxic tot. Anyway, then one who had escaped came and told Abram, the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of the Mamre of the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and Aner. These were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his kinsmen had been captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. And he divided his forces against them by night. He and his servants routed them and pursued them to the Haba, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his kinsman Lot with his goods, and the women and the people. Women and people, both. Abram blessed by Melchizedek. That one's kind of fun. After his return from the defeat of the Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shavah. That's the king's valley. And the Melchizedek king of Salem brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of God Most High. He blessed them and said, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, maker of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." And Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the persons, but take the goods yourself." But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have sworn to the Lord God Most High, maker of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours, lest you say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who went with me. Let Aner, Eshol, and Mamre take their share. Chapter 15, God's covenant with Abram. After these things, the word of the Lord came into Abram in a vision. Fear not, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. But Abram said, O Lord God, what wilt thou give me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. Eliezer. It's Eli and Zer. Abram said, Behold, thou hast given me no offspring, and a slave born in my house will be my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. This man shall not be your heir. Your own son shall be your heir. And he brought him outside and said, Look toward heaven and number the stars, if you are able to number them. Then he said to him, So shall your descendants be. And he believed the Lord. He reckoned it to him as righteousness. Yeah, that's the same thing as count the dust, count the stars. And he said to him, I am Lord who brought you from Ur. That was nice to bring him from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. But he said, O Lord God, how am I to know that I shall possess it? He said to him, Bring me a heifer 3 years old, a she-goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Okay. This is a very specific request from God. And he brought him all these, cut them in two, laid each half over against the other, but he did not cut the birds in two. When the birds of prey came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. As the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and lo, a dread and great darkness fell upon him. Then the Lord said to Abram, Nova survey, Nova surety, so like Nova in assurance, that your descendants will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be slaves there. They will be oppressed for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation which they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. As for yourself, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in good old age, and they shall come back here in the fourth generation, and for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. When the sun had gone down, it was dark, and behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, To your descendants I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the land of Kenites, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgash, and the Jebusites. The birth of Ishmael. Now, call me Ishmael. Call me maybe. I just met you, and this is crazy. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bore him no children. She had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, Behold, now the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go in to my maid. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. So he's going to have Hagar fuck his wife so he gets a son, I guess. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. So Abram dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her maid, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. Then he went into Hagar, and she conceived. That's a nice way to say it. Went in Hagar, and she conceived. And when we saw When she saw that she conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. And Sarai said to Abram, "May the wrong done to me be on you." Uh, I'm something you're glue. I gave my maid to your embrace, and when she saw that she'd conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, "Behold, your maid is in your power. Do to her as you please." Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. The angel of the Lord found her by the spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. He said, "Hagar, maid of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?" She said, "I'm fleeing from my mistress Sarai." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her." "Where are you going?" Yeah, I listened to DMB, all right? The angel of the Lord also said to her, "I will greatly multiply your descendants, that they cannot be numbered by for multitude." Yeah, we get it. Dust, stars, infinite children. And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are with this child and shall bear a son. You shall call him Ishmael, because the Lord has given you affliction." I thought it was affection. It's affliction. I'm gonna get my glasses. That would help, being that my vision is bad. Okay. Where were we? Okay. Return to your mistress. The angel of the Lord found her by the spring in the wilderness, the way to Shur. He said, "Where are you going?" Okay. Return to your mistress and submit to her. The angel of the Lord also said to her, "I will so greatly multiply your descendants, they cannot be numbered for multitude." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are with child, and shall bear a son. You shall call him Ishmael." I already read this. "Because the Lord has given you affliction. He be wild, a wild ass of a man. He shall be a wild ass of a man." That's in the Bible. "His hand against every man, and every man's hand against him. He shall dwell over against his kinsmen." So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "Thou art a God of seeing?" For she said, "Have I really seen God and remained alive after seeing him?" Therefore the well was called Beerla Haroi. Beerla Haroi. That's quite the well. It lies between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bore Abram a son. And Abram called his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Good call. God told you to do that. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. Yeah, it's his kid. Sign of the covenant. I saw the sign. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram, said to him, "I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless, and I will make my covenant between me and you will multiply exceedingly, and will multiply you exceedingly." Okay. I think that means you'll have lots of kids, or maybe that means like I'll just like pull some God strings and make your life abundant. Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, "Behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be Abram, but your name shall be Abraham. For I have made you the father of a multitude of nations." Yep, three. Uh, and your kings, I will make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make nations of you, and the kings shall come forth from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations for everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your descendants after you. And I will give you and to your descendants after you the land of your sojournings, all that land of Canaan for everlasting possession. I will be their God. And God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, and your descendants after you throughout your generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and your descendants after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He that is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised. Every male throughout your generations, whether born in your house or bought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring, both he that is born in your house and he that is bought with money shall be circumcised. Takes really circuitous route to say a simple thing there. So shall my covenant be in your flesh, an everlasting covenant. An uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenants. You got to break your dick or you break your God protection. And God said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall call her not name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she will be a mother of nations. King of peoples shall come for her. Yeah, she's got an anglicized name now. So does Abraham. Of course, people will come. Then there's not like weird vowels anymore. You're just making them more basic. And then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live in thy sight. God said, but Sarah, your wife, shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I will bless him and make him fruitful and multiply exceedingly. Same deal. Fruitful and multiply exceedingly. He shall be father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this season next year. So you got to wait a year to. Anyway. Could they just like fuck all year and then they wouldn't have a kid until it was a year? That would be pretty cool. Like God birth control. Because I assume God's right. He's God, you know. Anyway, when he had finished talking with them, God went up to Abraham. Then Abraham took Ishmael his son and all the slaves born in his house were bought with his money. Every male among men of Abram's house he circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very day. And God had said to him, I'm sure that didn't go over well. Just like, hey guys, gather around. We're going to chop off the most sensitive part of your body. Because God told me. He's like, no, I'm 87 or 140 years old. Like, what are you're going to chop off my dick? Part of your dick. Just the most sensitive part. No worries. Then Abraham took Ishmael, his sons, and all his slaves born in his house and bought with his money, every male Every male among the men of Abraham's house, sorry, he's not Abraham anymore. He circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very day. Abraham was 99 years old when he circumcised the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very day, Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised, and all the men of the house, his house, those born in the house, and those bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. Okay, like just a suggestion. You don't have to tell us that it applies to the people that you buy to, like 5 times. We get it. It applies to them. A son promised to Abraham and Sarah, and the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre, and he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day, lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, 3 men stood in front of him. When he saw that, he ran from the tent to meet them, and he bowed himself to the earth and said, "My Lord, I have found favor in your sight. Do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, while I fetch a morsel of bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant." So they said, "Do as you have said." And Abraham hastened into the tent to Sarah and said, "Make ready, quick, 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes." And Abraham ran to the herd, took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to the servant who hastened to prepare it. Then he took the curds, sorry, veal, I guess. Then he took the curds and milk and the calf which he had prepared and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "She's in the tent." The Lord said, "I will surely return to you in the spring, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced and aged. It had ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I have grown old and my husband is old, shall I have pleasure?" After you're old, shall you have pleasure, Sarah? That's quite an ask. Um, what has God got for you, Sarah? After I am old, shall I have pleasure? Okay. Now, I will sure. Okay. The Lord said, "Where's your wife Sarah? She's in the tent." The Lord said, "I will surely return in the spring. Sarah, your wife, shall have a son." Sarah was listening. Now, Abraham and Sarah were old. It ceased to be with Sarah in the manner of women. All right. So I think he can't fuck anymore. His dick doesn't work. Viagra won't exist until Pfizer makes it for several millennia. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, "After I've grown old and my husband's grown old, I still have pleasure." The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear pleasure?'" The Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time, the appointed time, I will not return. I will return to you. Sorry. At the appointed time, I will return to you. In the spring, and Sarah shall have a son." But Sarah denied, saying, "I did not laugh," for she was afraid. He said, "No, but you did laugh." That's some real mansplaining, telling Sarah whether or not she laughed. Judgment pronounced on Sodom. Here we go. Then the men set out from there, and they took towards Sodom. Abraham went with them. to set them on their way. The Lord said, "Shall I hide Abraham what I am about to do? Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do?" The Lord's has to hide stuff from the guy? Seeing that Abraham shall become a great and mighty nation, all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by him? No, for I have chosen him, that he may charge his children and household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry which has come to me, and if not, I will know. So the men turned from there and went toward Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. Then Abraham drew near and said, wilt thou indeed destroy the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Wilt thou then destroy a place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from thee to do such a thing, to slay the righteous with the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. Far be it from thee. Shall not the judge of all earth do right? And the Lord said, if I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake. Abraham answered, behold, I have taken upon myself to speak to the Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. Suppose 5 of 50 are lacking. Suppose 5 of 50 righteous are lacking. Wilt thou destroy the whole city for lack of 5? And he said, I will not destroy it if I find 45 there. Again, he spoke out to him. He said, suppose 40 are found there. He answered, for the sake of 40, I will not do it. God is very specific on the numbers of things. He answered, for the sake of 40, I will not do it. So 40, he's like playing Price is Right now with Abraham. Then he said, oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there, bargaining. I mean, they are Hebrew, you know. He answered, I will not do it. I will find 30 there. He said, behold, I have taken upon myself to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found there. He answered, for the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. Then he said, oh, let not the Lord be angry, I will speak again but once. Suppose 10 are found there. He answered, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. And then the Lord went his way when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So I guess he's down with killing 5 innocent people, but not 10, because 10s are special, like 3s and 5s. You're watching 10s right now. This is 1s and 0s. Depravity of Sodom. This should be fun. 2 angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. Isn't that where Lot sits? When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the earth and said, my lords, turn aside, I pray you, to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet, and then you may rise up early and go on your way. They said, no, we will spend the night in the street. But he urged them strongly, so they turned aside to him and entered the house. And he made a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man surrounded the house, and they called to Lot, where are the men who came out to you tonight? Where have all the people gone today, my honey? Bring them out to us, that we may know you. We may know them. So bring them out so we can get to know them, I guess. Lot went out of the door to the men and shut the door after him, and said, I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Behold, I have two daughters who have not known man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for have come under the shelter of my roof. So I guess he's offering the virginity of his two daughters to uh what? Yeah. Anyway, before they lay down, the men of the city of Minnesota, all the people to the last man surrounded the house, both old and young, and they called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them. Lot went out of the door to the men, shut the door after him, and said, I beg you, my brothers, bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. And do nothing to these men, for they've come under the shelter of this roof. But they said, Stand back. And they said, This fellow came to sojourn, and he would play the judge. Now we will deal worse than with them. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. Okay, then they pressed hard against the man Lot and drew near to break the door. But the men put forth their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck with blindness the men who were at the door of the house, both small and great, so wearied themselves groping for a door. Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed. Then the men said to Lot, Have you anyone else here? Son-in-laws, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city? Bring them out of their place, for we are about to destroy this, because the outcry against its people has become so great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and said to his son-in-laws who were to marry his daughters, Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city. But he seemed to his son-in-laws to be jesting. When morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, Arise, take your wife to the city, and your two daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. But he lingered. So the men seized him, and his wife, and two daughters by the hand, the Lord being merciful to him. They brought him forth and set him outside the city. And anywhere in the valley, flee to the hills, lest you be consumed. And Lot said to them, Oh no, my lords, behold, your servant has found favor in your sight. You've shown me great kindness in saving my life, but I cannot flee to the hills, lest disaster overtake me and I die. Behold, yonder city is near enough to flee, and it is a little one. Let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And will my life be saved? It's an exclamation point. So it's like, will my life be saved? He said to him, Behold, I grant you this favor also, that I will not overthrow the city of which you've spoken. Make haste, escape there, for I can do nothing until you arrive there. Therefore, the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun had risen on the earth when Lot came to Zoar. Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. Fire and brimstone from the Lord out of heaven. He overthrew those cities and all the valley and all the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. Scorched earth policy. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. That's just fun. Like I could try to break down like the symbolism and explain why it's a pillar of salt, but it's just a silly. It's like slapstick image. If you actually think about it, God's just like you're a mound of salt, a pillar, like a tower of salty dog. This lady, she's not a dog anymore. Not even a dog. She's just a pillar. Just a salty. Anyway, Abraham went out early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord, and he looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land in the valley, and beheld, and lo, smoke of the land went up like smoke of a furnace. So it was that when God destroyed the cities of the valley, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out into the midst of overthrow when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt. Shameful origin of Moab and Ammon. Okay. Now Lot went up to Zoar and dwelt in the hills with his two daughters, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar. So he dwelt in a cave with his two daughters. And the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there's not a man on earth to come into us after the manner of all on earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve our offspring through our father. So they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she arose. On the next day, the firstborn said to the younger, behold, I lay last night with my father. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. Then you go in and lie with him, that we may preserve offspring through our father. So they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him. And he did not know when she lay or when she arose. Thus both of the daughters of Lot were with child by their father. The firstborn bore a son, called his name Moab. Sweet fucking mountains, bro, Moab. He's the father of the Moabites to this day. Ugh. Like incest, like rape baby, that's the father of Moab. It is in Utah. The younger also bore a son, and he called his name Ben-Ami. Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites to this day. Okay, now Ben-Ami, I'm guessing because Abraham became Abram and Sarai became Sarah, I'm guessing this is going to be Benjamin. I haven't read the actual Bible. Because it sucks. Abram and Sarah at Gerar. From there, Abraham journeyed toward the territory of the Negeb and dwelt between the Kadesh and Shur. And he sojourned in Gerar. So much sojourning going on. Nobody sojourns anymore. In this Bible, people just can't stop sojourning. And Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. Okay, so it's all incest. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife. Not because you're related, that's fine. It's a man's property. You're stealing. Because women aren't people in this myth. Abimelech had not say to me, she is my sister. Oh, okay. Behold, you are a dead man because you're a taken man and she's man's wife. Now Abimelech had not approached her. He said, Lord, wilt thou slay innocent people? Did he not himself say to me, she is my sister? And she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart, the innocence of my hands, I have done this. Then God said to him in the dream, yes, I know that you have done this in integrity of your heart. And it was I who kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. Now then, restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet. And he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not restore her, know that you shall surely die, and all that are yours. So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called his servants and told them all these things. And the men were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? And how have I sinned against you, that you've brought me on me in my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me that ought not to be done." And Abimelech said to Abraham, "What were you thinking of that you did this thing?" Abraham said, "I did it because I thought there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is indeed my sister, and the daughter of my father, but not daughter of my mother. She became my wife." This is some serious Jerry Springer, like baby daddy, like Maury DNA test. "And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, 'This is the kindness you must do to me. At every place to which we come, say of me, he is my brother.' Then Abimelech took the sheep and oxen and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham and restored Sarah, his wife, to him. And Abimelech said, 'Behold, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you.' To Sarah he said, 'Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is your vindication in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are righted.' Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, and also healed his wife and female slaves, so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife." Okay, so he let the the Zoar and Lot, he let the person, God didn't punish the person who had gotten drunk and had sex with his daughters, but he did punish the person who married his sister. Yeah, I don't know what we're supposed to. Birth of Isaac. Lord visited Sarah as she had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised, restored her womb. So kind of God. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. A year later, Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, "God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. They're all going to laugh at you." And she said, "Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would suckle children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age." Okay, so she's just like bragging about like that she's having a kid and she's old. Hagar and Ishmael sent away. As the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, playing with her son Isaac. So she said to Abraham, "Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave shall not be heir with my son Isaac." And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, "Be not displeased because of the lad and because of your slave women. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you. For through Isaac shall your descendants be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring." So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and skin of water. Skin of water. Maybe just skims like a pond. I don't know, dude. They don't have Brita. He gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, along with the child, and sent her away. She departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Beersheba. I wish there was still a Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she cast out the under the child. She cast out the child under one of the bushes. Then she went, sat down against him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot. For that she said, let me not look upon the death of a child. Okay, so she just wants to look away as the kid is killed, I guess. As she sat over against him, the child lifted up his voice and wept. And God heard the voice from the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift the lad, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the lad a drink. Oh, I think the skin is like a jug or something. Like it's probably like a leather skin sort of container for water. That's how I am interpreting this myth. Then God opened up her eyes, and she saw a well of water, went and filled the skin, gave the lad a drink. God was with the lad, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness. He became an expert with a bow. Shout Sag. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him in the land of Egypt. From the land of Egypt. His mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Okay. Abraham and Abimelech make a covenant. Lots of covenants, lots of sojourning. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me by God that you will not deal falsely with me or with my offspring or with my prosperity, but as I dealt loyally with you, you will deal with me and with the land where you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. When Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well of water in which Abimelech's servants seized, Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, and I have not heard of it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen, gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant. Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock apart. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs which you have set apart? You. He said, these 7 ewe lambs you will take from my hand, that you may be a witness for me that I dug this well. Therefore that place was called Beersheba. And because they're both of them swore an oath. Because they're both of them swore an oath at Beersheba. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines. Back to sojourning, making these what are they called? Covenants, sojourns. The command to sacrifice Isaac. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, he said, here am I. He said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Such a sweet, sweet fantasy baby. Offer him up there as burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I shall tell you. All I want for Christmas is you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his ass, and took two of his young men with him and his son Isaac, and he cut the wood for burnt offering, and arose and went to the place God had told him. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. Then Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the ass. I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come out to you." And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. He took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they both went together, got a donkey on board. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, "My father," he said, "here I am, my son. Behold, the fire, the wood. But where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" And Abraham said, "God will provide himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son." So they went, both of them together. So, okay, Lamb of God also sucks. I guess every metal band just gets their name as like a random. Hopefully, Black Sabbath isn't in here. And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham the second time from the heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, says the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will indeed bless you. I will multiply your descendants in the stars of heaven, and as the sand which is the seashore, and your descendants shall possess the gate of their enemies. In your descendants shall all the nations of the earth bless themselves because you have obeyed my voice." So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. Okay, so God said, "You have to sacrifice your child to me," and only because he was willing to murder his son was he blessed by God. That's a great lesson. The children of Nahor. Now, after these things, it was told Abraham, "Behold, Milcah also born children to your brother Nahor. Uz, the firstborn of Buz his brother, and Kemuel, father of Aram, Chesed, Hazo, Pilbash, Jeladoph, and Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. These 8 Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother. Moreover, his concubine, who was named Reumah, bore Teba, Gaham, Tahash, and Maacah. I think that's 3 syllables. Sarah's death and burial. Spoiler! Always a spoiler with these titles. It's like I didn't want to know that this was going to be. I'm just going to stop reading the titles of the chapters. Anyway, I guess we'll end it with Sarah's death and burial because it's like an hour and 10 pages. It seems to be about how long it takes to do 10 pages for me. Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. Yeah, you could edit out that second time you restated the exact same thing. And Sarah died at Kiriath-arba, that is Hebron in the land of Canaan. Abraham went in to mourn for Sarai, to weep for her. And Abraham rose up from before his dead and said to the Hittites, "I am a stranger and a sojourner among you. Give me my property among you for a burying place, that I might bury my dead out of sight." The Hittites answered Abraham, "Hear us, my lord. You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our sepulchres." I have to look that up. Sepulchres. None of us, will withhold from you his sepulchre or hinder you from burying the dead. Abraham rose and bowed to the Hittites, the people of the land, and he said to them, "If you are willing that I should bury my dead out of sight, hear me and entreat me, Ephron," like Zach the Snack, the son of Zohar, that he may give me cave of Machpelah, which he owns. It is at the end of his field. For the full price, let him give it to me in your presence as a possession for a burying place. Now, Ephron was sitting among the Hittites, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites of all who went at gates. It all went in at the gate of the city. No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field. I give you the cave that is in it. In the presence of the sons of my people, I give you it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed down before the people of the land, and he said to Ephron, in the hearing of people that land, of the people of the land, but if you will, hear me. I will give the prince of the field. I will give the prince of the field. Accept it from me that I may bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, my lord, listen to me. A piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is it between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham agreed with Ephron, and Abraham weighed out Ephron the silver for which he had named in the hearing of the Hittites 400 shekels of silver according to the weights among the merchants. So the field of Ephron in Machpelah, which was to the east of the Mamre, the field with the cave, which was in it, and all the trees that were in the field throughout the whole area, was made over to Abraham as a possession in his presence of the Hittites, before all who went in at the gate of the city. After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, east of Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. The field and the cave that is in it were made over to Abraham as a possession for a burying place by the Hittites. So yeah, I guess Sarah just dies. They don't really talk about why. Yeah. Anyway, sweet myths so far. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama.